All right, we've got Luke Goodwin and Logan Schneider here in the top four. One thing that I want to say is I know Luke has been trying super hard to get to this spot. He's placed 18th in Atlanta, just shy of getting a invitation to nationals, and placed 31st in Toronto. He's been to a couple DLCs, so him making it this far, getting his invite, and also earning a Golden Mickey, I know he's excited for that. He'll be playing Emerald Steel while Logan is playing Amethyst Ruby. And we'll see what both of these players have opening up. Logan being the 33rd seed means that he is going to get to go first. We're going to start with inking a Sisu and passing over to Luke without a 1-drop.
And not having a 1-drop is not ideal, but it's not the worst in this matchup. Keeping cards in your hand for later on when when Luke might have a card that discards them is never too bad. So we are a little bit sad to see the 1-drop Diablo, because that might mean a shift Diablo in our future here.
Yeah, I do see that shift Diablo in hand with an action. So next turn, Luke could shift it if he wants to. Luke's just taking the time to memorize Logan's hand, being able to know what your opponent's next couple moves is can be very important. Knowing how to plan around some of those cards. We saw that Logan has the Brawl in hand for the Diablo. I don't think we have a Hidden Cove in hand for Luke to get around that, but Luke can be prepared for it. We're going to pass on over to Luke. Logan inking another card and not playing anything.
Yeah. As Luke, we did get a peek at the hand last turn, and we did see that the only 2-cost character was that Madam Mim, so we did kind of expect this if we're Luke, but we are still happy to see it. Happy to have less pressure on the board. Now, do we think Luke is going to shift this Diablo here, knowing that there's a Brawl in hand? I think the answer is probably no here.
Yeah, there's something definitely to be said about going ahead and shifting the card and forcing the card out of your opponent's hand, forcing them to use it. One thing that I'm noticing with Logan here is, it might seem like not playing any cards the first couple turns of the game is a bad thing, but in this matchup specifically where Emerald Steel, one of their avenues of disrupting you is discarding your hand, ensuring that you can't get your ink all the way up so that you can play the more expensive cards in your deck. It's not actually the most terrible thing for Logan here, that since he's not inking a card and playing a card every turn, that means that only one card is exiting his hand every turn, and then of course you're drawing a card for turn, so we're staying pretty net positive here. It's going to make it extra hard for Luke to lean into that discard package if he wants to, and I think it's going to be vital for Logan in this matchup specifically to get up to 7 ink so that when we start drawing those Be Prepareds, I'm going to take a look at the deck list real quick. We're not running any big Sisus, so the most expensive card in his deck is going to be Prepared. You just want to ensure that you can play some of those high uninkable cost cards like Lady Tremaine and Madame Medusa as well. So we're going to see Luke not shift the Diablo and instead play an Ursula Deceiver, get another look at Logan's hand, not finding a song to discard, but being able to see what Logan drew and what he's working with.
So now he does know that there is a Merlin Rabbit sitting there. That was not there last turn, but now we do have access to that information. He's definitely thinking here about whether or not he wants to just end his turn on this or shift to get the draw and force the Brawl. See, one thing forcing the Brawl does is it forces, of course, the action out of hand, but it also makes it so Logan doesn't get to play Sisu this turn, which isn't bad because Sisu does have a lot of strength. It has 2 lore. And 4 willpower is nothing to scoff at, especially for the stat lines of Emerald characters not being that high.
Right, most of these Emerald characters that we see being played in Emerald Steel decks have relatively low strength, so that extra willpower is going to be helpful, and Sisu gets an extra strength for every card in the opponent's hand, so Luke has quite a few cards in hand, which means that Sisu is going to be particularly strong. Also, being a 2-lore quester means that Logan can quest with Sisu and ensure that you can get decent value out of it. We're going to see Luke go ahead and shift Diablo by discarding a Sudden Chill and then singing Let the Storm Rage on with that Diablo, putting 2 damage on the Sisu and drawing a card. We do find a Strength of a Raging Fire. We haven't spent any ink this turn or inked, so if we wanted to get rid of the Sisu this turn, we could ink a card, play Strength of a Raging Fire for its cost of 3 ink just to banish the Sisu.
If we go for that play, we do lose out on 2 cards in our hand. It's not the worst, and it does force the Brawl next turn, so we're looking at a few free turns for us. But it looks like we're going to set up this Ursula for the turn after this. We do have the strength, like you said, and that'll be very good with this Ursula to deal 2 damage to the Sisu and also 2 to another character that may or may not enter the board as well.
This is one of the things that Emerald Steel excels at, in my opinion, is presenting multiple threats to board. We have the Diablo, we have the Ursula Deceiver of All, and now Logan's been in a position where you really want to get rid of both of these, but if we're going to play Brawl this turn, we can only Brawl one of them. And so you kind of have to wonder, is it more valuable to Brawl this Diablo, ensuring that Luke doesn't draw extra cards off of the card, or is it better to Brawl this Ursula, wondering if Luke has any songs in hand that Ursula could double sing on the next turn?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting looking at the game state from Logan's side, because his hand is basically fully known at this point. Luke has seen it twice. He's probably memorized every single card in it, save for maybe the 2 draws that he's missed. But, you know, I think even the Queen's Castle is a new card into his Inkwell, and that could give away that he might have drawn a second one. So Luke having perfect information here while Logan does not is a very interesting position for Logan to be in. It looks like we're using 3 ink here, and that could be for the Brawl, which is what we probably assume is going to happen here to take out that Diablo. Definitely a card you want to get rid of if you're playing Ruby Amethyst.
I think one of the things Logan might be wondering here is if, you know, the Diablo is an obvious threat. We don't want Luke to continue to draw cards off of Diablo as we draw cards. But also, if this Ursula is seeing something like a sudden chill, you know, we could force us to discard 2 cards at once. And we've talked about how important in this matchup for Ruby Amethyst it is to keep cards in your hand so you can ink up to 7. So it looks like we are going to use this Brawl on the Ursula Deceiver of All, banishing that, leaving the Diablo in play, and then we're going to go ahead and quest with the Sisu, gaining 2 lore, and we'll probably pass the turn on that.
So Logan prioritizing the Ursula over the Diablo here, probably because he has that Elsa in hand for next turn to go ahead and rush in, take out the Diablo. And at that point, maybe this Elsa can even trade for a second Diablo. So that makes sense. So we're going to see a Hypnotize off the top of the deck for Luke here.
See Luke playing this Hypnotize, forcing Logan to discard a card from hand, and Luke gets to draw a card as well.
We're going to see a Be Prepared discarded here. Probably doesn't want to get hit too hard by another Ursula Deceiver. So choosing to discard a song card is an easy discard because it lets you have less songs in hand, which means you're just inherently not going to lose a card to that card.
It's also uninkable. You know, it's not a card you can get rid of. We're a couple turns off of 7 ink, so you don't want that card sitting in your hand. Totally makes sense for Logan to discard there. And we are going to use a Strength of Raging Fire to banish this Sisu, singing that with Diablo, getting Diablo exerted so that we can draw cards on Logan's turn when he draws cards. Luke trying to decide what we ink for this turn. I think we don't talk about Bruno that he's considering putting into the Inkwell right now. Maybe looking to get this beast in play on the next turn.
Luke definitely using his perfect information here on the hand to make a meticulous decision on what he wants to ink, making sure that everything he inks is not something he wants for the rest of the game. It's very important here to, you know, when you're in these top 4 scenarios, to really think about your plays and, you know, make the right choice.
We're going to see Logan inking the Queen's Castle, playing that Elsa 5th Spirit that you mentioned a couple turns earlier, Sam, doing exactly what we thought it would. Elsa has Rush and Evasive, so being able to challenge that Diablo as soon as it enters play. Can also exert a character when Elsa enters play, but of course the target here is Diablo. Luke did draw Diablo on Logan's turn. We might see another one redeployed, but we also have that Beast Tragic Hero in hand, which is another draw engine for this deck. If Beast is left undamaged at the start of your turn, you get to draw an extra card. If he is damaged, then he gains extra strength, 4 extra strength to be exact, on your turn.
So it looks like we're eyeing up a Hidden Cove or a Diablo to ink here. I see our 2 lines of play are probably, ink Strength of a Raging Fire and play this Diablo in the Hidden Cove, move, the Diablo to the Cove. That's exactly 5 ink. It looks like we're going to do not that play. We're going to ink the Hidden Cove, say we don't need that, and we're going to go ahead and just play the Beast.
Yeah, it's an interesting decision here because since Logan was able to go first in this game, that means on next turn, Logan could get up to 6 ink. We know that Logan doesn't have anything like a Madame Medusa in hand, but we know that Logan's definitely playing Madame Medusa. And so playing out the Beast is susceptible to being banished by Madame Medusa. If we have kept the Hidden Cove, we could potentially move Beast into that, taking it out of range. But then, of course, we know that Ruby players are usually also playing Maui. Logan's playing 3 of them. Maui's a Rush Reckless character that can deal 6 damage, which is exactly enough to take out the Cove. I think Luke is deciding that Cove is not going to serve us very well at this point in the game. Putting that into the Inkwell, and we're just going to try to establish this Beast and see if it sticks.
Both of these players are very experienced in this matchup. Having had played it probably multiple times this weekend already, I'm sure they're very used to the lines of play and the maybe mannerisms of opponents that have, had similar things. So I definitely trust their judgment on this one. Let's see. Oh, and we do see that Madame Medusa here. So this could come as a surprise to Luke next turn on his Beast if the Medusa stays in hand. But if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think we had any discard cards currently. And we're only seeing 2 new cards. So this may not be... Yeah, he may not be able to discard all the cards in his hand this turn.
And we'll see what Luke draws at the start of the turn. We get another Diablo and a Baboom, so no ways to discard that Madame Medusa out of the hand, but potentially ways that we can get rid of some of these characters in play. We're going to start by inking a Baboom, playing 2 Diablos with our 6 ink, and then just questing for 1 with Ursula and passing the turn.
Diablo Devoted Herald, definitely a card you do not want to see in 2s when you're Logan here. We drew a Sisu for turn, so that's probably hitting the Inkwell here. We're probably going to keep the Fox and the Library for later. Go ahead and take care of that Beast.
Madame Medusa being played, banishing a character with 3 strength or less. Beast having only 3 strength, and we're going to use Elsa and Rabbit to banish the Ursula Deceiver, excuse me.
That Ursula Deceiver probably got in 3 lore before it was banished, so very, very good card there. Oh, and it looks like we have drawn a Morph for turn, and we are going to see at least 2 new cards before our draw for turn here, so the likelihood of us seeing a shift line is pretty high. This Morph could be very game-changing here.
Yeah, when we look at Luke's deck list, he is playing 4 Beast Tragic Heroes and 2 Tinkerbell Giant Fairies as the shift lines. We, of course, have Diablos as well to shift, but definitely need to be on the lookout for any of those characters that could shift onto Morph in the next turn. Logan's going to start by playing a Madame M. Fox, bouncing the Rabbit to draw a card. Fortunately, Madame M. Fox won't be able to rush into any characters because both Diablos are evasive, which means they can only be challenged by evasive characters. And of course, every card that Logan draws, Luke gets to draw 2 of them. So Luke just got an extra 2 cards off of that Rabbit being bounced. That's 4 cards that Luke has drawn before the start of his turn here.
Yeah, definitely a very scary situation for Logan. Staring down 2 Diablo Devoted Heralds when you're playing Ruby Amethyst is definitely not the spot you want to be in. A lot of your advantage when you play this deck comes from drawing additional cards, and Diablo is not a card you want to see when you have a lot of cards that say draw. So it looks like our players are talking about if we can move something to the library here, or maybe Logan is thinking which character we want to move to the library. Which of these characters is more studious?
Logan taking time to think about this before we pass the turn. You know, these players have high stakes here, being in the top 4. They want to have plenty of time to make sure they're not making any misplays. It could cost them a spot in the finals. Logan is going to decide to move the Madame M. Fox to the library before passing it back over to Luke, who's going to draw a card for turn. And we ended our turn with 0 cards in hand and starting our turn with 5 cards in hand.
Seems good to me.
We did find some shift characters with 2 Beast Tragic Heroes that we could shift out for 3 onto this morph if we wanted to. Also finding the likes of Muses, and I think we don't talk about Bruno, another removal card. If I let the Storm Rage on, we're going to sing that, deal 2 damage to Madame Medusa, and draw a card.
Now we have seen a lot of players using the Muses to their advantage this weekend. Very powerful card that whenever you play a character, you get to return something to hand with 2 or less strength, and that can be anywhere on the board, which is a pretty fun application of that card. Now, in this particular matchup, maybe it's not so good. It might be a card that finds its way to the Inkwell. Maybe it's a card that we use mostly for its ward ability to maybe prevent our opponent from banishing it with an effect that chooses.
Looks like Luke is going to play this Sudden Chill for 2 ink, forcing Logan to discard one of the 2 cards out of hand, either Rabbit or the Queen's Castle. Logan doing a little bit of math, trying to make sure he doesn't discard the wrong card at this point. Deciding to discard the Rabbit, likely because these Diablos on board. You know, Rabbit can be an extremely good card for card advantage. Every time it enters and leaves play, you get to draw a card. But when Diablo is on the other side of the field, especially 2 of them, you're also giving your opponent cards. You're actually giving your opponent more cards than you are. So we see how much of an advantage that gives a player just from this turn. Luke having multiple options after the last turn with no cards in hand. We're going to ink the Muses this turn.
It looks like we're eyeing up this We Don't Talk About Bruno. And Madame M is going to be returned to the hand with the effect of We Don't Talk About Bruno, which it returns a character to hand and then discards a card randomly. So it looks like we rolled a die here to achieve a random result, and it shows the Queen's Castle. So that's the card that Logan decided to keep off of the discarded for Sudden Chill. So I'm sure he is not happy to see that one go.
As we go back to Logan here, we use the Diablo to challenge the library, putting 2 damage on it. You know, we've talked all weekend about how difficult some of these locations can be to answer for Emerald Steel players if these Amethyst players can gain some board control. But as Logan starts and draws this card for turn, Luke is going to draw 2.
And it looks like that Merlin Crab is going to go right back to hand, even though he was just played by the effect of Madam Mim Fox. And it looks like it's going to make its way to the Inkwell as well.
It looks like we had a little bit of technical difficulties there with the camera, so we're coming back to the booth real quickly, but I think things are getting figured out, and we should be back here in just a minute. Luke's looking to set himself up pretty good here, so I'm hearing that I think we're pretty good now, so I think we can go back to... Okay,
and we're good to go. All right, so we figured it out. There is now So we're back to where we were, and there's a beast on the board. There's a lot of cards in hand. Okay, so it looks like we've moved forward just a little bit. And the library. Okay, so Diablo's going to take out the library here. We're going to Sudden Chill. Logan's going to discard a card, discarding the Madam Mim Fox. So it looks like right now this is not a very favorable position for Logan at all. He has no cards in hand that I can see, and his opponent has, well, enough for both of them if they want. So,
yeah, Luke certainly has plenty of options to work with here, and a pretty scary board at that. 3 of your draw engines in play with the Prince John, the Beast, and Diablo. Again, just highlighting how great Diablo is, and that every time Logan draws cards, Luke gets to draw cards as well. You can see Logan playing Prince on the other side, digging for some answers. Luke drawing along with Logan.
We're going to see 2 Mauis in hand. Unfortunately, Maui is not evasive, unless you have his fish hook. So we will not be able to challenge that Diablo with these Mauis.
Luke has drawn so many cards at this point in the game that I think he's counting his deck to make sure that we're not getting too close to decking out, which you can lose a game of Lorcana if you don't have any cards left in your deck that you can draw when you need to draw for turn.
Suffering from success.
Luke having many, many options here in his hand and lots of ink to work with.
Let's see, we have 7. I don't think we've inked yet for turn on Luke's side. When you have this many cards in hand, it can be very hard to decide what to ink, what not to ink. Do I ink? Do I need these cards? Should I keep a card? So I totally understand Luke, going through his options here, making sure he's got the right play before he commits his cards to the board in a meaningful way.
I do like seeing this Pete being played as well. Essentially keeps Logan from playing any actions on his turn coming next, so Luke can go pretty wide on this board without fear of a Be Prepared being played or Logan finding a friends on the other side to dig for any answers. Keeps his characters relatively safe.
And if we're Logan here, we're definitely looking for a Be Prepared, or if he plays it, we're also looking for a Sisu. But looking at the deck list right now, it looks like he is not playing any copies of the Sisu, the 8-cost shift that banishes all characters with 2 strength or less. That'd be pretty good here to neutralize the board state, but it looks like we do not have access to that.
Yeah, this is why we see how powerful Pete can play, especially at this point in the game where you're trying to build up your threatening board, ensure that you can basically get another turn out of these cards. Because Ruby Amethyst players like to rely on cards like Be Prepared, and Be Prepared would be a great answer to this board right now, given all of the threats that are there between the Diablo, the Beast, and the Prince John. The more threatening a shift character that could come down, like Tinkerbell, another Beast, or Diablo.
Looks like our players are discussing something just between them, maybe about the amount of ink exerted right now. Or maybe they're just making dinner plans.
They definitely could be. Luke has so many cards in hand. I think you reach a point where there's a little bit of decision fatigue. There's so many possibilities, so many play lines that you could go through here. Could take a little bit of time to figure out what the most optimal play line is in this situation.
Yeah, so far this turn, because it's been a second here since we played the Pete. I think we've just played the Pete. And I think at one point we were singing Let the Storm Rage On. But I think now it's back in hand. Maybe that's what we're discussing. Maybe we're discussing that we didn't actually want to do that. And we're doing something else now.
Yeah, I think Luke's considering singing that song, potentially banishing the Magic Broom, Luminary Keeper, that if it comes back to Logan's turn, you could use, when you play a character, you can banish the Magic Broom and draw an extra card. Luke plays Let the Storm Rage On to the Magic Broom, then just denying Logan that option to dig a little deeper.
Yeah, as much as Luke has been liking Logan drawing cards, I think he's done with it now. I think he's ready to move on.
You think Luke has enough cards? You think he's happy?
All right, so going up in lore here would definitely be advantageous for Luke. Just trying to close the game out before Logan can see before Logan has an out. Because right now we have Pete active. We're blowing the whistle. We're saying no more actions. Stop doing all that. And but that's only for one turn. So
yeah, and unless Luke has another Pete in hand, Logan really needs to find something like a Be Prepared. We mentioned that he's not playing the 8-cost Sisu, so Be Prepared is the only board wipe available to him. But even if we do find that, Luke has so many cards in his hand that he should just be able to redeploy more threats, especially with the amount of ink. We should be pretty free to ink a card this turn based on the amount of resources we have in hand. So I think Luke is setting up for a pretty dangerous turn. If we can afford to quest with some of these characters and build up lore, it does make them a little bit vulnerable. But again, we just have other we have other options that we can play from our hand for this. So looks like Luke's just figuring this out. This is why these matches are untimed, because we are in a very high stakes situation here.
So I think right now I see off to the right here. Off to the right here, I see 2 cards left in Logan's hand and I do see that in Luke's hand here that we do have a sudden chill at the front, and I know I saw an Anna Diplomatic Queen at the back of the hand. So if we had wanted to, we could, or if we wanted to, we could definitely also get rid of the cards in hand as well. So it looks like I'm noticing now Logan, I think, is talking to someone off to his right, maybe a judge, came over to clear some rules confusion. You know, Lorcana is an easy game to learn, but when you really get into it, you know, there are some complicated rulings and, you know, situations that players can find themselves in.
Especially at this point in the tournament, being in the top 4, you know, both of these players are playing for their spot in the finals where they could potentially become champions at DLC Seattle. You want to make sure that all the players are playing to as close to the rules as possible, making sure that everybody's playing fairly, ensuring that we have a good and fair winner here.
So it looks like Logan is fanning out his discard. Both players nodding at one another. Yep, it looks like we are waiting here for some kind of answer from a judge. All right, so for Logan, how do we get back into this game? Because right now we're pretty much on the back foot.
Yeah, I mean, if we're Logan here, like we mentioned earlier, be prepared is one of the, I mean, really, I feel like is the only way to even potentially get back into this game at this point. So Luke, having played the Pete games referee here, makes it so that Logan can't play any actions on his next turn, including be prepared, which means Logan's going to essentially get a free turn here to play a couple characters, quest or sing with these characters if he wants to, without worrying about it be prepared being played. You know, where Logan could deploy, or sorry, Luke could deploy a couple characters onto the board with the remaining ink and use those to quest on the next turn. The unfortunate thing for Logan is that even if we do find to be prepared on the turn after that, or find one that's in hand, then when we play it, it is going to banish all characters. It will wipe the board, but I mean, Luke has to be holding, you know, 10 or 15 cards in hand at this point, so he's going to have plenty of other characters that he can play after that. A lot of them likely the same. I know there's some beasts, maybe some Diablos in there, and Logan's going to have to find another be prepared or another way to answer those with like Madame Medusa, Lady Tremaine, things like that. But it does look like Luke is going to go ahead and sing Let the Storm Rage On with Diablo, banishing the Magic Broom, drawing a card. And we're exerting 3 ink here, maybe playing, yep, looks like we're going to play Hypnotize, force Logan to discard one of the cards of the 2 out of his hand. Luke's going to draw 2 cards, one of them from the Hypnotize and the other from Prince John because of the discarded card. And Prince John's ability that lets him draw a card. I think Luke is eyeing up a sudden chill as well, forcing Logan to discard that final card in hand. We're going to sing that with Morph, then draw a card off of Prince John.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and ink this Ursula. So we had not inked yet for turn. Makes sense. We have a lot of cards in hand here. And we're going to go ahead and use Prince John, an excellent singer, to sing Strength of a Raging Fire, which is going to leave us with 2 ready ink here. Now, we could commit another character. Seems pretty good here as we are, you know, as we do have this Pete protecting us from something like Be Prepared, as we talked about. And I think I did see another Pete games referee in Luke's hand, maybe for the follow-up here.
Yeah, and that could be detrimental in this game. I think we have 8 lore on board currently for Luke, knowing that Logan couldn't, even if he had drawn to Be Prepared, couldn't play it this last turn, means that we've insulated our characters to quest on this next turn or We know that they will still be around a quest on this next turn. That would push us up to 16 lore, I believe. And then if we had another Pete that we could play after that, then, and we see Logan playing it now, then that means that if Logan finds to be prepared next turn, there's nothing they can do either. So this could be checkmate for Logan here.
We're going to play Diablo to look at our opponent's hand.
Not much to look at for that. Luke's gonna pass, play a rabbit, draw a card, see what we find. But I think this is it for Logan. We see the smile. I think knowing what's happening, passing it back over to Luke, and Luke has plenty of characters to quest with to take game one in this best of 3 for the top 4.
We see a classic matchup: Emerald Steel versus Ruby Amethyst. Good game from both players there. I think the Emerald Steel really took over. I mean, it was a long game, a long section in the middle there that where nothing happened, but they really took over when they emptied the hand and they were removing the characters every turn. So
yeah, I mean, we saw Emerald Steel do what Emerald Steel does best, and it's not a particularly easy deck to pilot. Luke did a great job at. If we think about early in the game, we played the turn 1 Diablo, looking at Logan's hand, knowing that we saw the brawl, and then instead of shifting that Diablo on turn 2 with the Ursula, we decided to wait a turn, shift the Diablo on turn 3 while playing the Ursula Deceiver of All, putting Logan in a really difficult spot, and from there just sort of snowballing off of the advantages that we could gain from the likes of Diablo and Beast, Ursula, Prince John as well. So great showcase there for Luke with Emerald Steel, but that's only game 1. There's at least one more game to go, potentially 2. So let's have a look and see if Logan can come back and take a second game.
Let's take a look. All right, so we are going to see Logan going first in this game 2. Now, Logan definitely, he missed his turn 1 character last game. And while that probably wasn't the end of the world, and he missed his turn 2 as well. While that probably wasn't the end of the world, like we said, it is nice to have him. So we're probably looking for a Chernobog's Followers here, maybe a Magic Broom. He plays a total of 7 between the two of them, so likelihood is he will probably see one, especially since he didn't see one last game.
Yeah, those are some pretty good numbers, and also they are characters that, replace themselves, which I think is extremely important in this matchup. You want to be sure that you have enough cards in hand going into turns 5, 6, and 7 so that you can get to 7 ink, so that you can actually play those Be Prepareds from hand since they're uninkable. I didn't catch what Luke finished with his altar, but I believe he kept a Morph, a Cove. I think we had the Shift Diablo in hand as well. Seeing a fun character in there, Doc. I think Luke is only playing one of those. We've seen Doc plenty this weekend. A little bit of a flex card, I think, in the Emerald Steel deck, but one that can allow Luke to draw some extra cards if he finds himself low on cards in his hand. Luke, of course, not having the 1-drop Diablo, is just going to ink and pass the turn back to Logan. I do see the Flynn Rider in Logan's hand, which could be particularly good. If we can get the Flynn Rider out, keep it around, and keep a character with more strength than your opponent's on board, that Flynn Rider can gain 3 lore at the start of your turn. I think Logan does have the Flynn Rider and then the 3-cost Sisu in hand as well, so could follow that up on the next turn. We do see that Sisu in the back of Logan's hand.
So we do see a Morph as well in Luke's hand, which will, at least for one turn, hold off this Flynn Rider if Logan chooses to play it. Now, I wonder if Logan will choose to banish his Magic Broom this turn.
I think that's what we're thinking here. We have the Madam M Snake at the front of the hand too. And we could play the Madam M Snake, bounce the Broom, not being able to banish it because it has to be bounced. But it's not the worst thing to put a card back in our hand for the reasons I mentioned earlier. You have to constantly be concerned about Emerald Steel's discard and how aggressive that can be. So we are going to decide to play the Madam M Snake, which when you play Madam M Snake, you have to choose one of your characters to put back in your hand, or else Madam M Snake is banished. So we're going to choose our Magic Broom. Could use it as ink for the next turn. Could use it as a filter card to play and then play another character just to banish and draw.
We do see a morph lined up for this turn. We see a hidden cove in the back there. Behind the hidden cove, I think that might be a foil card, maybe a Diablo. So that is not a 2-cost card. So looks like we're going to be going with this morph here. Morph, a very powerful card, allowing us to play the Beast Tragic Hero on curve on turn 3, giving us that extra draw every turn.
That can be an especially strong play against Ruby decks too, because Beast having 3 strength means that something like Brawl isn't going to take care of it. And so if you can get Beast Tragic Hero out as early as turn 3, you're basically guaranteed 2 or 3 card draws off of it if you don't quest with it and keep it undamaged, because Ruby just doesn't have any cards to interact with it that early. You could, as early as turn 5, play an Elsa 5th Spirit just to damage it, but it's a very, very inefficient way to get damage on the Beast. We are going to see the Sisu being played by Logan on turn 3, and we will see that Beast shifted on turn 3 from Logan here. Very strong start for him.
Very good from Logan's part here, playing a lot of characters that have more than 2 willpower, making it very hard for Luke to get those easy snipes with a card like Let the Storm Rage on, or even a Strength of a Raging Fire, or a Fire of the Cannons Baboom, something along those lines.
Like this play from Logan here too. We're going to play Queen's Castle, which is putting Luke in an interesting situation where Queen's Castle having 2 lore on it means that Logan's going to gain 2 lore at the start of his turn as long as the Queen's Castle is in play. And so it really incentivizes Luke to need to challenge and banish this location. But of course, Beast Tragic Hero, you don't want to be exerting Beast so that it can be challenged and damaged, because you want to keep Beast undamaged so you can draw an extra card at the start of your turn.
And you definitely don't want to exert any characters while you have this many cards in your hand versus a Sisu. That Sisu right now has 8 strength. So in order for it to not have enough strength to take out the Beast, Luke would have to empty 4 cards out of his hand, which actually, even then, that would not be enough. He would have to empty 5 cards out of his hands here.
And he can only get up to 4 ink this turn,
Yeah.
so I definitely don't think that's happening. I mean, I get, like, if he really wanted to, he could play this dock. He could play the dock, discard his hand, and then draw 2 cards, and that would do it. But
I don't think we'll see Luke doing that this
I
time.
have a feeling Luke is not going to go with that play line here.
So it sounds like this Queen's Castle here is going to go uncontested, but the Beast will be singing. We don't talk about Bruno. I almost said along came Bruno.
Along came Bruno. It's okay. We don't like to talk about him anyway. So we're gonna roll for a random card to be discarded out of Logan's hand after that Sisu was sent back to hand. Sam bringing up a good point about why you want that Sisu off of the board when Beast is exerted, because we certainly don't want the Beast banished. There is a silver lining here, though. If Logan does challenge and damage the Beast, then the Beast will have enough strength to challenge and banish the Queen's Castle in return. So unless Logan has a way to banish the Beast on the next turn, I did see him out of Fox, but we need at least 1 extra strength. One extra strength. 1 extra damage, but on the Beast to banish it there. Luke's going to decide to play this Diablo from hand.
The dice definitely on Luke's side here, with that roll of a 3 that sniped the Maui out of Logan's hand. I bet Logan is a little bit sad right now that Maui was, because I'm sure he would love it right here to just play for 5 ink. I mean, he's going to 5 right now. He's at 4. And use all 5 of those ink to play that Maui. Maui with rush, 6 strength, 5 willpower. Those are some really good stats to beat up on a Beast Tragic Hero that your opponent has left exerted for you.
Yeah, definitely might have been one of the best, the best card to discard out of Logan's hand in this specific scenario. Just so that your Beast at least survives until the next turn. Passing back to Logan, have a couple options for our turn 4. We have a Merlin Rabbit in here, Merlin Goat. We could bounce a card with Fox or try to replay our Sisu and establish some board presence.
And like you've been saying, Brandon, Emerald Steel doing a great job of presenting multiple threats to Logan here. We have both a Beast Tragic Hero, drawing us an extra card every turn, and a Diablo Devoted Herald, which even worse for us, will draw whenever we draw. So for the Ruby Amethyst deck, that's just a nightmare. So
yeah, and I think we see Logan understanding that here, deciding to play the rabbit on this turn while the Diablo is readied, so that we can get the card draw off of it without giving Luke an extra card here, getting us closer. We did draw a Be Prepared off of that, so we're 2 turns out from that. But if we can avoid an Ursula Deceiver,
an interesting scenario Logan is presented with. He could have his Madam Mim Snake challenge the Beast Tragic Hero, which would take away the draw, and it looks like he will be doing that. But now the Beast Tragic Hero, his hidden second ability that not many people remember, is that when he has damage at the start of your turn, instead of drawing, he'll be gaining 4 strength. And guess what? 4 strength is a perfect amount of strength to have when you're challenging the Queen's Castle.
you know, I think I have to mention something for good sportsmanship here. I think Luke just pointed out that Logan had an extra ink return that he could move the rabbit to the Queen's Castle if he wanted to. Might just be because he knew he was going to take the Queen's Castle out here with the Beast, but
That's true. That's true. At this point in the tournament, saying stuff like that is a very kind thing to do from Luke's end.
Luke is going to play Hypnotize after banishing the Queen's Castle, forcing Logan to discard a card and drawing a card for himself. We're going to see Logan discard that Sisu, figuring out how we want to exert Diablo here. I think we're looking at a Let the Storm Rage on, or if we want to sing that or just Quest. Oh no, we're going to sudden chill, force Logan to discard another card. I think Logan's really holding on to this Be Prepared here, hoping that Luke doesn't sniff it out. If we can last 2 more turns, we might be able to actually play it.
We're looking at Luke's hand right now. We do have 1 more Hypnotize. Well, of course, we have the Morph and the Let the Storm Rage on as well. But the 1 Hypnotize won't be enough to take out this Be Prepared next turn. If Logan does just ink and then just pass here, which is honestly a real play for Logan to go for.
It would put Logan in an interesting scenario, though, even if we do play the Hypnotize, because we're going to draw a card for turn here, going up to 3 cards. We need to ink a card so that we can go up to 6. And then we have to hold on to this Madame Medusa as another inkable card. If Luke decides to play Hypnotize, we're forced to discard a card. If we discard our inkable Madame M. Fox, then that means we're required to draw an inkable card on the next turn, just so that we can ink up to 7. But we are going to play this Madame M. Fox, bouncing the rabbit, drawing a card, ensuring that we can put some extra cards in our hand so that we have that inkable card for Be Prepared. Luke is going to get a draw off of Diablo for that, and then we're going to use Madame M. Fox to banish the Beast Tragic Hero and send it back over to Luke.
And from the top of our deck, we do find 2 copies of Ursula Deceiver.
I hate seeing that for Logan. Luke finding the Ursula Deceiver, knowing exactly what to expect as Logan is going into 7 ink, playing the Ursula Deceiver just to check if we have a Be Prepared. And of course, Logan does. So Logan's going to discard that, and then we're going to force another discard through Hypnotize. You can tell that Luke has played against Ruby plenty enough times to know to sniff out those Be Prepareds.
We do see in Luke's hand that he has a Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. Probably not going to come up in this matchup, but that is a good finisher for this deck. And looks like the Elsa is going to save us from this Diablo that has been terrorizing us.
Yeah, at least now without a Diablo in play, Logan can draw cards without fear of giving Luke extra cards as well. And Elsa does have the benefit of being evasive, so doesn't have to worry about Luke challenging anything into it.
Looks like we're eyeing up 3 ink here. Maybe not, but that could signal that we want to use this Let the Storm Rage on. It seems weird, though, because it doesn't quite take this Elsa out. It does bring it to 1 damage remaining. Maybe that's to finish it off with Tinkerbell next turn, but who knows what Luke has planned here.
Yeah, there's a couple things we could do here. Unfortunately, we can't sing the Storm Rage on. If we could deal 2 damage, ink a card, play Tinkerbell, but might be setting up for a Tinkerbell play soon, putting 2 damage on the Elsa. We could also, we don't talk about Bruno the Elsa, back to the hand, forcing a discard. We're going to ink an Ursula, play the Tinkerbell, dealing 1 damage to Elsa. Questing with both Ursula and Doc here. Start pushing our Lord just a little bit.
I like this play from Luke. It puts a lot of pressure on Logan to answer the Tinkerbell here. I mean, it's a 2 lore. For every turn that it stays on the board, it puts a lot of offensive pressure on any exerted character. Obviously not Elsa because she's evasive, but any exerted character that isn't evasive has a lot of pressure put on it when Tinkerbell's on the board. So it looks like Logan is drawn for turn and is thinking a bit about what he wants to do with his newly drawn card. I don't know if he has readied his Elsa and is already quested.
I don't think
Looks
he
like
has.
We're going to ready that. Quest with that. Okay. And now we're going to think about what we want to do here.
I didn't catch what card he drew either. So I'm eager to know what Logan may be considering here. It's like a Maui. We are going to play the Maui. Rush and challenge that Ursula Deceiver, putting 1 damage on Maui.
Maui's definitely not a card you hate to see here if you're Logan. It puts a, just like Tinkerbell, it puts a pressure on any exerted character that Luke decides to now exert.
Yeah, I think Logan was considering playing this because Luke can still challenge Maui with the Tinkerbell, banish it, then deal 2 damage to the Elsa, banishing that. But Tinkerbell does get banished in the process, so maybe weighing the value of playing the Maui and it being banished by the Tinkerbell here and also losing your Elsa. Of course, we know that Luke has other answers that he could play as well. We are going to see him play the Muses.
So I wonder if Luke is going to go for a play here where he's going to return his own dock to his hand. I think that's a very interesting line that we haven't seen yet today with the Muses specifically. We did see it a lot with Madame Mim and Befuddle.
We certainly have. It's an interesting thing because Doc is not a card that we usually see being played in Emerald Steel list. I think Luke is only playing a single copy of Doc as well, but it might be just for this combination available to you. The Muses is a very critical card in these Emerald Steel lists for various reasons, both being able to bounce your characters back to your hand and your opponent's characters when you play a song card, at least characters with 2 strength or less. But it might be a way just to recycle your docks so that if you don't have access to one of your draw engines like Prince John or Beast or Diablo, you at least have your dock that you can use to play and bounce, discarding your hand, drawing 2 cards, and keep yourself at least back in the game.
So Logan has drawn for turn here, and we are thinking about what we want to do with our new card. We're going to keep it in hand here. Maybe it is something that is not good at the moment. Maybe it's a Madame Medusa. I could see that, but because that is also a card we can't ink, so worth keeping at the very least. I mean, Luke probably has a way to discard it, but if he does, you know, it's kind of like a better have it scenario. Okay, looks like it's a Madame Mim Fox. Fair enough.
Another fun thing about the Muses, you know, we can bounce this Ursula back to hand and reuse it to check what Logan has in hand if we wanted to, but we're going to go and play the dock. We're going to then use Strength of a Raging Fire to banish the Maui. It'll deal 4 damage because there's 4 characters on board. And then we're going to use the Muses' ability to bounce the dock back to hand, purely using the dock there to get us to that 4 character limit for Strength of the Raging Fire to banish the Maui.
A very cool way to use dock. Definitely a very cool way. We see we've drawn a Flynn here for turn, which is going to allow us to go Flynn, Mim, and then play the Flynn again if we want to. So we are going to be able to play our whole hand, have 2 characters on board.
You can play the Madame Mim Fox and banish this Muses here. The Fox will survive, only taking 2 damage. Logan deciding to ink the Flynn so that we don't give Luke a free discard from our hand.
Yeah, I guess playing the Flynn here if we plan on challenging the Muses, which makes a lot of sense. is probably not worth it, as the Tinkerbell would swing in. It would banish the Madam Mim because, of course, in a challenge, banish it with your damage, and then it would use its Puny Pirate ability to do that 2 damage to the Flynn Rider and banish it as well.
Looks like Luke is going to play Diablo after banishing that Madam Mim Fox with the Ursula Deceiver. And then we're going to play another Muses that we found. Just Emerald Steel doing the same thing, being able to play threat after threat, thing that you have to deal with constantly. Logan with no ways to draw cards, only playing off the top of his deck. Not in a great spot.
He was definitely looking for a Merlin Rabbit or something like that before this turn, but now that Diablo is going to be in rotation, it's going to be difficult to come back into this game without giving Luke a little bit more cards in the process. So
yeah, Luke doing a fantastic job of taking the control player's role in this game, just making sure that Logan doesn't have any advantage, any value at all. Every character that gets played is going to be banished, or any card in hand is going to be discarded. Ensuring that we can keep our wide board and slowly quest up to 20. I say slowly, we just push all the way up to 14 for Luke.
well, we have at least one more turn here. We only have 5 represented on board. We're going to go ahead and play Anna, and with her ability, you can pay 2 extra ink and choose one of 3 abilities, and the ability that he chooses is discard a card. And it looks like Luke is going to take this game, this match,